objective today is really to talk about social profiles, like Carla mentioned, and figure out what's the best way to present ourselves online to attract work. And that could be, jobs, or it could be, if you want to do freelance work, could be clients or customers. There's a lot of avenues for this. And I've done this many times for both coaches and entrepreneurs, but also people who are looking for just, traditional full-time or part-time work as well. So I know this works. This falls under my Profile Alchemy brand. I have like an email course under this as well. So it's all about the same objective. Now, we don't have as many people, but I'd love to hear from all of you just to get to know you a little bit. You can just put in the chat because we have a smaller amount of people, where you are, what your profession is. I would love to learn what kind of designer you are is really that's what I want to learn, or what kind of profession. And then, yeah, we can move on from there and I can introduce myself. But yeah, while everyone's writing, I'll just kind of say from my own area, I live in Canada, British Columbia, so I'm on the western side of Canada, so just on a little island called Vancouver Island. It's beautiful over here, a lot of trees, a lot of walks, and just a lot of beautiful areas. My profession is not a designer, or it used to be, but now I'm a marketing expert. So I help people online, but also in person around their marketing, especially with lead generation. So trying to get clients to their door, or just clients, or email lists, or anything like that. And my years of experience is around 7 years of experience, both from formal work as well as my own entrepreneurial ventures. I don't know if I'm the only one. There it is. There's the chat. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kel, for sharing so you're a UX UI designer from Florida, Brazilian, 5-year experience. Perfect. That's awesome. And then Calcius, UX UI designer. Perfect. Awesome. Well, nice to meet you all. That's awesome. And then, of course, whoever's watching, you can't do this exercises, but hopefully we can meet in another way, especially at the end of this webinar as well. Oh, right. So like I said, a little bit about me, a little bit more. My experience comes from a lot of formal work, as well as working with organizations like The Future, Lead Pages, and then also taking some training from Meta. So I've learned a lot about advertising and just multifaceted areas of marketing. So I've done a lot of work to build up my own expertise, and I've tried to find my own spin on things as well. So my biggest focus is on empathetic marketing. Instead of trying to push people on the hard sell, or try to coerce people into working with us, I focus more on progressive marketing, where we're trying to build a community and we're trying to actually share our expertise for free and then share the implementation for a paid price. So we're offering more help than the typical marketing expert would tell us to do. So that's what I've done. I've helped over 600 entrepreneurs do this exact thing. I'm not really a coach for these people. I'm more of a person that's just there to actually help them. So I have a done for you component. So these 600 entrepreneurs, I didn't just give them advice and let them be free. I actually help them apply all that knowledge, because I want to be there for them and not just, let them go in the woods and get lost. So that's what I've done for the last 7 years or so. And if anyone's interested, you can find me on LinkedIn, same Ian Efford, and that's where I'll share a lot of my projects in public, and I actually do this every single day. Okay, so now with the introductions and everything out of the way, I'll just dive right into social profiles, which is what we're talking about today. So with social profiles, my perspective on it is that social profiles' job is really to direct attention to your value as an expert and as a professional. So they're really just landing pages, and if you don't know what that means, it's essentially a very concise landing page or website, or anything you want to use those words for, to direct people to your single best value that you have as an expert. So it really takes all that attention to generate from content or networking and turns it into action with the messaging that you have on your profile. So everything must be aligned. Your about section on LinkedIn, your picture and bio, and your banner on YouTube, or anything that we have, it should all be aligned to that single message. And we'll talk about how we can get that message and using concepts like minimal value and all that in a few minutes. One example I wanted to share was a few different people that have done this really well. So one person is someone I've connected way back over 4 years ago, is Evelyn, and she's done a really good job with pairing her side hustle with her full-time work. So if we look at down here, we have head of education at Com Marketing. So that's her full-time role, but she's done a really good job on segmenting her niche down to helping people build their personal knowledge. So using tools like Notion or any sort of note-taking app, then she helps you try to build that into a system so you can increase your productivity and take care of all the busy work. So she's done a fantastic job with her profile, just telling people what she can help with, and also, of course, telling employers that she's like an awesome person that can head a whole brand and a whole division of work. So she's not just, a freelancer, but she can do a lot more work like that. And another person is actually Alex, who I met again a long time ago, but he started at least when I knew him, he was completely into building content and having a whole newsletter, and he had over 2,000 subscribers, I should say, on his Steel Club newsletter. And as he was building that, it took him a little while to find his groove, but once he did, he was able to get a lot of full-time work from it. So right away, he got full-time job offers from a lot of indie companies, so a lot smaller. But soon that grew into, getting both working for Tapulo, which is a LinkedIn tool, and then that was eventually required by Lempire, and that's how he turned into, an influencer marketing and growth marketer. So really, all his work of building his brand and his social profile and his social presence has allowed him to get that full-time work in the end, where he's enjoying his work, he's doing a lot of fun stuff, and also talking about it online. So again, because of all this work he's done, he was able to get that work pretty easily, actually. And one thing I'll just quickly show, just based off of my own profile and how it works, is I'll just share and switch over to LinkedIn here. So if we look at here, what we're seeing, this is all premium, so you don't really need to do this for yourself, but it's just more of an example of how your profile can make you seem more professional to a bunch of companies. So if we look at, who's seeing me as a person, as a professional online, I see I have people who are working on LinkedIn, who work at Fiverr and Upwork and Redbrick. So I think these are more freelancers, but down here we actually have real companies, and then we can view all, and we can see all the different companies that are viewing my profile and viewing my content as well. So of course, this doesn't really matter on the granular level, but it's more of like a macro view at who's seeing it, and all these profile views are potential employers that could hire us. And I've received a bunch of messages myself from recruiters and talent acquisition teams from various companies. It didn't always work, but occasionally I found a job that I would want to work for. So just as a quick example, not something you need to purchase premium for, but more of just an example of how this works. So I'll just switch back to my slides there. All right. So yeah, so to really put this all into perspective and actually get to work, we want to focus most on the bio for this, example that I just showed you, because the bio is more critical on the profile. It's where the attention you generate from all your activities, your networking and whatnot, will be directed somewhere. So whether it's your website where they can learn more about you, or just to show, oh, this person can really do a lot of work for me and can increase value of XYZ in my company. So when it comes to, looking at that a little bit more on a granular level, we have the bio really sets the tone in terms of when people read it, they see if they're worth your time, or you're worth their time, I should say, like I said. And when visitors want to know what you can provide, we're focusing more on that minimal value. So that's bolded because it's a concept I will review in the next slide. But it's really about trying to tell people how you can help them, and not just say, I'm an expert in marketing, but I'm an expert in this area and I've done it before and I have stats to prove it. So that's just an example there. So minimal value is, a question you can ask yourself is, what's one project you nailed in your last job, or can nail in your sleep. So it may not be your last job, maybe 15 years ago, but whatever it may be, what's something that you can tell people, I did this and I got this positive result from it for my company or for my client. And that's what we want to focus on. That doesn't mean if I say, I'm a brand designer and I help people create stylescapes for their brand so they can align every person on their team. That doesn't mean I can't accept any other jobs. That just means I'm telling people what I've done and what value I provided, just like a cover letter. You want to tell people exactly what you're going to do for them or based on what you've done in the past. So that's really what we're talking about with minimal value. It doesn't mean you need to limit your design skills or your professional capacity at all. It's more about, telling people what you've done in the past. And that's that positive result. It's not really as important as the minimal value, but what's your work done for a company or a client? What's that, positive outcome you've given people? For example, it could be increasing impressions by 30% or something like that. So a percentage, a timeline, anything like that can be a very good multiplier for the work that you're describing. So we can apply that more into examples here. So I'll just kind of tell you what's the minimal value and what's the positive result from there. So if I was, doing this for myself, so not as a fictitious designer or, my former work as a graphic designer, but if I was going to say I'm a growth marketer, what can I do in my bio and how I can describe myself? So for example, based on my last job that I had, I could say I help SaaS businesses. So this is what I did in the past, onboard customers using a coaching philosophy to decrease churn rates by 0.5%. So if we look at, break this down, everything doesn't really matter until we look at, onboarding customers using a coaching philosophy. So that's the minimal value I can provide any company because it's what I've done in the past and what I can prove I've done. So just looking at this right here, if I have another example for designing, but doesn't mean I only have to take on customer success roles or customer onboarding specialist roles, but it just means this is what I can tell you that I've done for a company and they've really liked what I've done. And then if we look at the positive result based on the last slide, we have decreased churn rates by 0.5%. For these low percentages, I should have probably also added what that meant. So 2.7% to 2.2%. But either way, it's still a percentage. It still adds some value and multiplies what I've done in the past. Because if I onboard customers and don't have a real positive result, it doesn't really matter as much, especially for companies nowadays and all the competition that's happening as well. And if we kind of take this and use a more design focus approach, and I was, a social media designer, I was a graphic designer, then I would say I would design social media graphics using color theory to increase LinkedIn and Instagram impressions by 30%. So that's just an example of what I've done on my last job is just, helping my team increase their impressions on their LinkedIn and Instagram profiles. And you can, spin this however you want, but I'm focusing more on social media graphics, which is my minimum value, because that just tells people what I can prove and what I've done in the past. And it kind of sets me apart because if I say I'm a graphic designer, there's probably millions of people who can say they're a graphic designer, and it's very competitive if you do that. But if you describe yourself as doing this one job, then you kind of set yourself out and maybe they'll message you and be like, oh, can you actually do this instead? And you're like, yeah, of course, I'm a graphic designer. I can do a lot of things. But we're just kind of grabbing their attention with this minimum value. So I hope that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, we can always go back to these examples at the end when we have questions. But I hope that kind of sets the stage a little bit. And with that in mind, I would love to do a little activity based off of the bio. So just to help all of us apply this knowledge, I'm all about, applying knowledge rather than just learning. So if we look at the bios previously, all the examples I showed from Evelyn and Alex, I use this bio framework to describe how we can help people. So if we look at this, I'll just in the next slide have an activity for 3 minutes, but you can get started right away if you have an idea. But if we look at all the bolded areas here, we have target audience, which doesn't really matter as much, but it's kind of the job you want. So if you want to work for SaaS companies, say that. If you have worked with companies and you love that work, say what that company is. So it can be more broad. It doesn't have to be, the hiring managers of X, Y, and Z company. It doesn't have to be that specific. So this doesn't matter as much, but really the minimal value and the positive result matters the most. And these go together, as we saw in the slide like this, where we have, social media graphics. I designed those to increase LinkedIn and Instagram impressions. So that's that minimum value, and that's that positive result. So with that in mind, I just have the framework at the bottom here, and I would love to spend the next 3 minutes just kind of playing around with this. It doesn't have to be perfect by any means, and we'll just do that for the next 3 minutes so we can get an idea of how we can apply this knowledge. And you can put it either in the chat, or if you're on your phone, or just on an area where you can't type very easily. You can also just think about it. You don't have to, put it on blast in front of all of us. So that's up to you. And we can give feedback at the end if you want to take your time to type it out as well. All right. Who did we have join? So we have Gabriella who joined. Hello to all of you. I know we had some Zoom issues. Zoom's always going to be a pain, unfortunately. We have Mohammed, and we have Senju. Yeah, so welcome everyone. I'm sure I missed a few people, but my chat is a little bit messed up at the moment, so I apologize for that. But welcome everyone who joined a little bit later. All of this is recorded, so if you missed anything, then you can review the recording, and you can always ask me at the end if you want to review anything or if you missed anything as well. Okay, so I believe it's been about like 3 minutes, 2.5 minutes or so. So if you don't have it finished yet, that's totally okay. Again, you can always submit it for feedback or just kind of review it yourself later. But I would love to just kind of move on. And if there's anything to encapsulate there, then you can always let me know. But with the bio, so that's the most important because, like I said, it takes the intention that we have for people, for employers, for companies, and all that networking we're doing to turn into some sort of action. So we're telling people, what we do for them and why they should be interested in us. But of course, with almost all profiles, whether that's LinkedIn, Instagram, we at least have the profile picture. And if not, then we also have a banner as well. So like on Twitter and all those places, there's always a banner place. So I wanted to kind of quickly go over what you can do there. And because I believe almost all of you, at least most of you, are designers, I don't really need to talk more about the design and how to present it, but I would like to talk more about what you put on the banner itself. So what's the message that you have? So when it comes to design itself, it doesn't really matter. You can be as creative as you want, but I would encourage you to try to visualize that minimum value I mentioned earlier. So kind of taking that a little bit slowly, if we think about me as a graphic designer, if I help companies design social media graphics, then maybe the way to visualize that minimum value is to have like little images of Instagram posts on my banner or something like that, and like almost like a catalog where it's like opening up like a book or something like that. So that's one thing, some element we can have the banner that will visualize what we do. So it's really, that's what we're doing, is visualizing what we can do for the company. Some of these banners that I'm going to show, especially these two, are focused more on the message. So that's something that you can do. You can focus more on what you want to see in your area of expertise happen. If you have like a unique perspective on UX and UI design, then you can just say that in a sentence and then have that. So my friend Kevon has, he's a online teacher, and he helps people try to present themselves and teach their concepts very easily. And he says, our world needs more good teachers who care about their students. So that's his mission. That's what he wants people to do. And then Yanis down here, he's focused more on, curiosity and creativity, and then multiplying that by the internet. So those are just examples of mission-based banners. And if we look at, some templates I played around with, if we focus more on what value I can provide, then if I'm, more of a drawing expert, I'm focused more on, creating mock-ups and anything else that would require me to actually use my hands. Then I might have a banner that has a bunch of pencils everywhere, and then what I do as the text. Another example for even a coder, for example, if you specialize in coding as well, along with your design, then you could have your almost like coding stack right here. So these are just a few select coding languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that I use very well. So that's just an example of how you can visualize what you do. So if that makes sense, again, if you have any questions, just let me know about banners. And then once we have the banner done, we want to focus on having that profile picture. So these are just a few profile examples. I have more in a course that I'll mention at the end of this. But really what we want to do is just make sure the background is not too complicated. It's not too eye-catching by itself, because it's really about you, not about the background, that we want to make sure that we encapsulate and highlight there. So sometimes, like for Carla, she has her great background with design and no code, so it falls in line with what she's doing. For these other two individuals, we have, a brick background, so it adds some texture, but it's not distracting. We can still see the individual up front. And then for this individual, we have just like some background add texture as well. That's not meant to mean anything in particular. Other people, like for myself, I just have a color background. I could have something in the background, but I think the color, my green color, draws more attention in the timeline and when I'm networking. So I use that because I don't have a great background that would do that otherwise. So that's what I choose. But of course, that's kind of up to you. I just wouldn't recommend having like a mountain in behind you or like a full-on, like, I don't know what it would be, like a city or something like that. You're taking it in your city. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend cutting that out with any sort of AI background remover and adding a color instead. So just try to make sure it's not too complicated. So those are, the three elements of a typical profile. We have the bio, and we spent some time on that. And I see a few people that shared their bio, so thank you for doing that. I will look at them in just a few minutes. And then we looked at the banner, and we focused more on whether we want to focus on the visualizing of our minimal value, or if we want to do more of a creative idea of our work and our mission. And then, of course, we have the profile picture as well. Thanks for everyone hopping on board. So for any questions, just as we have the last few seconds, just send me an email and I will just cover those in the email. I can even send you a Loom video to go over the slides as well.